You keep wondering, why does it feel like you're doing everything right, but still going nowhere? You show up, you stay consistent, you check every box. But the breakthrough? It doesn't come. The result? Still missing. And quietly, a voice creeps in. Maybe I'm not enough. Stop. That voice isn't yours. It's been planted by a world obsessed with speed, applause, and outcomes. But the Stoics knew better. Long before likes, trophies, and algorithms, they asked a different question. Are you living in alignment with virtue? Marcus Aurelius didn't judge his life by victories in war or praise from the Senate. He judged it by this. Did I act from integrity or impulse? Did I respond with reason or react from fear? In other words, success wasn't something out there. It was something within. And here's what changes everything. Power is in the process, not the outcome. Epictetus put it simply, do not seek for things to happen the way you want them to. Rather, want them to happen as they do. Then you will be happy. That's not passivity. That's peace. You are not your wins. You are not your losses. You are who you are in the face of both. You are the effort, not the echo. The decision, not the result. That's where your identity lives. And here's what people get wrong. Detachment doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care so deeply that you refuse to let the outcome define your worth. You give your best, you stay committed, but you're no longer controlled by what happens next. That's not apathy, that's mastery. You can love something and still let go of the outcome. You can give your all and still be okay if it doesn't land. That's real strength because it's not dependent on external praise. It's anchored in internal clarity. And the truth is, you don't need one big transformation moment. That's the myth. That life changes in a dramatic scene with music swelling in the background. But growth, real growth, it's not one massive leap. It's a series of quiet, honest steps. You don't need to see the whole staircase. You just need to take the next step, the one that's hard but true. Because courage doesn't always look heroic. It's not always a speech or a grand gesture. Sometimes courage is whispering no when every part of you wants to say yes just to be accepted. Sometimes it's writing one true sentence when your self-doubt screams, delete it. Sometimes it's just getting up, placing your feet on the floor, facing a new day when every cell in you wants to hide. Plato once said, the first and greatest victory is to conquer yourself. But that doesn't happen all at once. It happens in repetition, in small, defiant acts of truth, even when fear is loud, especially when fear is loud. You don't become a new version of yourself in one moment. You build it by being 1% stronger than yesterday. And each time you show up that way, something inside you shifts. You stop seeing yourself as the one who doubts and you start seeing yourself as the one who moves anyway. And that shift, that's everything. Because identity shapes action, and action reinforces identity. It becomes a loop you control. Let me ask you something. Who are you when no one's watching? When there's no camera, no comments, no audience, just you and the silence of your choices. That's where self-respect is born. Not in the spotlight, but in the shadows. Not when you're performing, but when you're just living. It's easy to act strong when everyone's looking. Easy to sound wise when people clap. But real transformation, it shows up when you do the right thing, even when no one will ever know. You're not your public image. You're your private consistency. And that's where power lives. You build real trust in yourself, not by saying the right things, but by doing the right things when no one's keeping score. It's not about loud declarations. It's about quiet follow-through, about making a promise to yourself and keeping it, even when it's inconvenient, even when it's unseen, because that's what builds inner architecture. The kind of structure that doesn't collapse when the storm comes. The kind that doesn't need validation to stand tall. Socrates once said, the soul is dyed the color of its thoughts. But here's the part people forget. It's also dyed by its habits, by the things you repeat when there's nothing to gain, by the rituals you carry out with no reward except the person you become in the process. And here's the shift most people never make. They chase self-worth in performance. But true worth comes from presence, from showing up fully, even when there's no applause, even when no one's watching. Because once you stop performing and start living from principle, your strength becomes unshakable. When you learn to walk forward without needing a witness, something changes. You stop shrinking. You stop editing yourself just to be liked. You stop apologizing for wanting more, for aiming higher, for standing in what you believe. Ambition isn't arrogance. It's clarity. It's not a threat to others. It's a signal to yourself that you are meant to build, to shape, to contribute. But somewhere along the way, someone taught you that wanting more made you selfish, that speaking your truth made you intimidating, that your light was too bright. But that was never about you. That was about their discomfort. Real humility isn't about disappearing. It's about staying grounded, offering your gifts with grace, not hiding them to make others comfortable. Socrates said, to find yourself, think for yourself. And when you finally do, you'll realize that humility isn't shrinking back. It's stepping forward, without needing to be the loudest voice in the room. Because courage isn't volume, it's alignment. It's living in line with what matters most, even when it's inconvenient, even when it's unpopular, even when it costs you something. You don't need attention to have impact. You don't need recognition to be significant. You don't need permission to matter. Your value isn't in applause, it's in how faithfully you show up. Day after day, quietly, powerfully, intentionally. And here's the truth no one tells you. Fear isn't the enemy. It never was. What holds you back isn't fear itself. It's the way you grip it, the way you let it dictate your life without ever questioning it. Fear only becomes dangerous when you let it drive and never ask where it's taking you. Fear thrives in silence. It multiplies in the stories you never challenge, in the thoughts you let run wild without stepping in and asking, is this even true? Because most fear, it's not a warning, it's a habit. But here's where the power shifts. The moment you stop blindly accepting fear as fact and start questioning it with courage, that's when the fog begins to clear. That's when you take the wheel. And I will reveal the most important step at the end of the video. You've been taught to fight fear with force, to crush it, to conquer it. But the Stoics had a different idea, a quieter, wiser one. They didn't say fear is wrong. They said fear is natural. What matters is what you do with it. Marcus Aurelius wrote, if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment. Read that again. You have the power. Not to erase fear, but to reframe it. To see it not as a stop sign, but as a signal, a compass pointing toward what matters. Because fear is often loudest where your potential lives. But you have to stop waiting to feel ready, because ready is a myth. You don't become brave by feeling safe. You become brave by moving anyway. Courage isn't a roar. Sometimes it's a whisper, I'll try again. Sometimes it's a breath, one more step. Sometimes it's just standing up when everything inside you wants to lie back down. That's not weakness. That's transformation in motion. And no, it won't feel cinematic. It won't come with a spotlight or soundtrack. It won't look like the movies. It will be acra, messy, often uncelebrated, but it will be real. Growth isn't fireworks, it's friction. It's you, in the dark, saying, this matters when no one else gets it. It's you showing up for your goals, your values, your peace, even when it's lonely, even when it's inconvenient, even when it's terrifying. Because that's the kind of strength no algorithm can measure, no award can define. And it's the kind of strength that lives inside you right now. All it needs is a decision, one small, quiet, defiant decision to keep going, to choose integrity over impulse, effort over excuse, meaning over momentary comfort. Because that's how identity is shaped, not in some giant leap, but in 100 small acts of alignment. You don't have to overhaul your life overnight. That's the trap, thinking everything must change in one sweeping motion, that clarity must strike like lightning, that purpose comes in a shout. But the Stoics never promised a sudden awakening. They promised something better, steadiness. Epictetus said, First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. That's not a one-time act. That's daily work. And that work is often invisible, quiet, repetitive. But over time, it becomes who you are. It starts in the choices no one sees. When you choose honesty instead of comfort, stillness instead of distraction, responsibility instead of blame. That's where strength is built, not in the applause, but in the absence of it. The world trains you to chase reaction, to seek validation, to perform for praise. But the Stoics knew that external approval is fragile. They urge you to build something unshakable, not a perfect image, but a stable core, one that doesn't crumble when life gets loud, one that isn't inflated by compliments or deflated by criticism. Because when your peace depends on the world's response, you give it power or it was never meant to have. But when your peace is built from the inside, from character, from discipline, from truth, it can't be stolen, not even by chaos. So the next time you hear the voice of fear, doubt, or pressure whisper, "You're not enough," pause. Ask yourself, ordinate to who? The algorithm, the audience, the critic who doesn't know your story? Or will you measure yourself by something deeper, something timeless? You weren't born to impress strangers. You weren't made to chase applause or shapeshift for approval. You were made to live with clarity, to act with honor, to speak with truth even if your voice shakes. But somewhere along the way, we were taught to shrink, to play small, to trade authenticity for acceptance. And yet, what has that ever truly given you? The likes fade, the followers forget, the applause quiets. But the cost of abandoning yourself stays. The weight of not showing up as you is heavier than any rejection ever could be. So stop asking the world for permission to be whole. Be whole anyway, even if they don't clap, even if they don't understand, even if it makes them uncomfortable. Because the moment you stop performing is the moment you start living. And when you live in alignment, not with trends, not with fear, but with your values, you stop being a puppet to circumstance. You become the author of your choices, the protector of your peace, the one who stands even when it's easier to sit, who speaks even when silence would get more approval, who shows up even when the reward is invisible. And that's when you become unstoppable. Because your strength is no longer up for negotiation, you don't need to have it all figured out. You don't need to move fast. You don't need to be 10 steps ahead. You just need to be honest about where you are and brave enough to take the next step. Because that next step, however small, carries power. Not the power of arrival, but the power of momentum, of intention, of self-respect. The Stoics understood this better than anyone. They believed greatness wasn't loud. It was quiet, consistent, and rooted in character. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it." If something you live, and when life pushes you, when things don't go as planned, that's when your Stoic is not true. Do not say it. No mentions of fame, no demands for praise, just quiet alignment with one's values. So what does that mean for you? It means your power is in your process, in your daily choices, in how you treat people when no one's watching, in how you respond when everything feels heavy. It means you don't have to prove your worth through titles or trophies. You prove it through perseverance, through showing up, especially when quitting feels easier, through choosing integrity over image, stillness over panic, clarity over chaos. That's what separates noise from depth, performance from purpose. And right now, in this very moment, you can choose to return to that purpose, to that quiet strength that doesn't need attention to exist. You're not too late, you're not behind, you're not broken. You're becoming. And becoming doesn't always look impressive. Sometimes it looks like resting instead of quitting, like asking for help instead of pretending you've got it all handled, like facing your fears instead of letting them silently guide your choices. It's not about getting it perfect. It's about getting honest. The Stoics didn't admire perfection. They admired effort aligned with principle. They knew that life was full of setbacks, and they didn't fight that truth. They accepted it. Not as weakness, but as part of the process. Epictetus said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." That sounds simple, but it's one of the hardest things to practice. Because it means taking full ownership of your life, not blaming, not waiting for the perfect moment, not chasing shortcuts. It means doing the inner work when no one else is watching, making peace with your past, taking responsibility for your choices, holding yourself to a standard even if no one else ever sees the effort. Because that's where real freedom begins, when your values aren't just something you speak, but with foundation is tested. Will you bend to pressure? Will you compromise your truth to fit in? Or will you stand still, grounded in what you know is right, even if it costs you approval? That's the silent victory the Stoics live for. Not applause, but alignment. And the more you choose that, the more you make decisions based on your values rather than your fear, the more you build an identity that's unshakable. You're not here to impress, you're here to embody. Because embodiment lasts longer than attention. The world might forget your name, it might overlook your achievements, it might scroll past everything you ever built. But what you become in the process, that stays. Character isn't something you perform, it's something you carry, quietly, steadily, through every setback, every silence, every stretch of doubt. The Stoics weren't interested in external validation. They knew that the truest power wasn't about controlling others, it was about mastering yourself. And that mastery doesn't shout, doesn't beg to be noticed. It doesn't need a platform or permission. It shows up, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard, because that's when it matters most. There will be days when nothing makes sense, when everything you've worked for feels like it's slipping away, when the people who promised to stay disappear, when your old patterns return like shadows and whisper, "See, you haven't changed at all." But those moments, they're not your ending. They're your testing ground. Will you retreat back into who you used to be? Or will you stay present, just long enough to take one more honest step forward, even if it's shaky, even if it's quiet, even if no one else sees? That's the difference between change and transformation. Change is external, it's what the world sees. Transformation is internal, it's what you know. It's when you finally stop needing to be someone else and start choosing over and over to become fully yourself. Transformation isn't loud. It's not about shouting your progress. It's about moving different, because you are different. You speak less but mean more. You react less but respond better. You stop chasing noise and start honoring peace. Because real power is quiet. It doesn't need to announce itself. It's in how you show up when no one's watching. Most people wait for permission, for the right time, the perfect conditions, but the Stoics, they acted without applause, without certainty, without needing anything but the moment itself. Epictetus said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." That's it. Clarity, then action. Then action. No drama, no delay. Every day becomes a vote for who you are or who you used to be. And every time you choose alignment over approval, discipline over impulse, truth over comfort, something inside you sharpens. Not overnight, but inevitably. Real progress doesn't scream, it whispers. It's not about impressing others, it's about becoming undeniable to yourself. Every time you show up, even when you don't feel ready, especially then, you strengthen that quiet core. The part of you that doesn't need motivation, only direction. The part that says, "I don't need to feel like it, I just need to do it." That's what the Stoics live by. Action without drama, discipline without distraction. They didn't wait for external clarity, they created internal order. Marcus Aurelius didn't chase validation, he chased virtue. And that's what made him powerful. Power isn't loud, it's consistent. It's not the big moment, it's the string of small ones you choose with intention. You win the war by winning the morning. You become strong by keeping promises no one sees. You earn self-respect, not by saying the right thing, but by doing it when it's hardest. The world will try to convince you that your worth depends on how much you achieve, how many people approve, how visible your results are. But the Stoics, they knew better. They knew that the foundation of real power is inner stillness, not outer noise. Seneca said it clearly, "If you know not to be governed by your emotions, then fortune has no power over you." And that's the key. Most people are chasing control over their circumstances. But the ones who thrive, who truly live with peace, are the ones who master their responses. Life doesn't have to go your way for you to go your way. Discipline, clarity, presence, those aren't outcomes. Those are choices you repeat day after day. And even when it's messy, even when your hands are shaking and your mind is screaming to run, you still take the step. That's real courage. Not the absence of fear, but the refusal to let it decide. You don't need the crowd, you don't need the gold star, you need yourself, undivided and awake. That's when things begin to shift. Not all at once, but gradually from the inside out. Every time you act from your principles, not your pressure. Every time you choose clarity over chaos, truth over trend, you're laying another brick in the foundation of a life that lasts. You stop reacting and you start responding. You stop chasing validation and you start standing in self-respect. And the more you do that, the quieter the outside world becomes. Not because it changes, but because you no longer need its permission. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his journal, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts, but it also becomes shaped by your actions, especially the small, unseen ones, the ones you repeat when no one's watching. That's where identity is formed. That's where power is built." Most people look for that single, life-changing moment, that big opportunity, that final answer. But they miss the truth. Transformation isn't a climax, it's a rhythm. It's the quiet return to what matters most, again and again. The most important step is still coming. So what happens when you stop waiting for permission? When you stop asking the world to validate what you already know in your gut? You begin. Not dramatically, not with fanfare, but with deliberate action. You start making choices that align with your core, not your craving for comfort. You speak when it's easier to stay silent. You hold your ground when blending in would be safer. You become the person who does what's right, not what's popular. That's when everything begins to shift. Not outside, inside, because you're no longer moved by the noise of comparison. You're no longer dancing for likes or hustling for approval. You're anchored, not adrift. You don't have to wait for courage to arrive like a bolt of lightning. You just have to act with honesty when it counts, and it always counts. Ready for more? You start to realize it was never about them, not their timeline, not their trophies, not their applause. It was always about you, and whether you had the courage to be consistent in your becoming, to rise when no one clapped, to work when no one watched, to believe when no one reassured you. Because here's the truth they don't tell you. Greatness is built in obscurity, when the spotlight is gone, when the praise is silent, when it's just you and the decision to keep going or give in. And if you're still here, still trying, still moving, then you haven't failed. You're simply being forged. Every day you resist the urge to quit, you're winning. Every time you choose discipline over distraction, you're evolving. And the world may not see it yet, but your soul does. Your inner world is rewriting itself. That's real shift. Not when they recognize you, but when you start recognizing yourself as worthy, as capable, as powerful. Not because someone told you, but because you watched yourself show up, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. Because pain refines what praise cannot. Struggle clarifies what comfort dilutes. And every time you keep going, you're not just building momentum, you're becoming someone new, someone rooted, someone ready, someone unstoppable. The truth is, you don't need to wait to feel ready. Readiness doesn't come first, action does. The more you move, the more your doubt shrinks. The more you act, the clearer things become. Progress isn't about certainty, it's about motion. And clarity, it doesn't come before the leap. It meets you midair. Most people wait for the fear to vanish. They wait to feel confident before they speak, before they build, before they begin. But here's the truth. Confidence is not the fuel. It's the result. You become confident by doing the very thing that scares you. You grow into courage by standing in the fire, not by avoiding it. And every small act of defiance against fear stacks. Every time you move forward anyway, builds. Not just results, but a different version of you. A version that trusts yourself, that doesn't need permission, that no longer waits for approval. You stop outsourcing your power and you reclaim it, not all at once, but in pieces, in moments, in choices, quietly, repeatedly, until one day you wake up and realize you're not the person who breaks anymore. You're the one who bends but holds. That's the real shift. When you stop measuring your strength by how loud you are and start measuring it by how deeply rooted you've become. When setbacks don't shake you like they used to. When failure no longer feels like identity, just information. When rejection doesn't mean I'm not enough. It just means not here, not now. That's when you've started stepping into true resilience. Because resilience isn't about pretending things don't hurt. It's about not letting the pain define you. It's about meeting disappointment. And instead of collapsing, you rise quieter, but wiser. Slower, but stronger. Not to prove anything, but because it's who you've become. And here's where it gets powerful. The more you align with this internal compass, the less external noise can shake you. You stop living for recognition and start living in integrity. You stop performing and start being. That's when everything around you begins to shift, because everything within you already has. That's the shift that doesn't scream. It speaks in how you walk, in how you act when no one's watching, in how you stand your ground when everything around you tries to shake you. You didn't need the spotlight, you just needed your truth. And now every quiet act of courage, every honest choice, every step taken in alignment with your values, that's your power. Because when you stop performing and start living from your core, you don't just talk about strength, you embody it. In silence, in peace, in every small, consistent moment. And that changes everything. If this message connected with you, if it lit even a small fire inside you, then like, follow, and subscribe for more videos like this. We're building something real here, and you belong in it.